Hello, everyone. This is the 115th episode of the Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles and the Soccer Nostalgia blog. Unfortunately, Mr. Paul Whittle of the 1888 Letter blog could not make it this time. For this episode, I interview Austrian blogger Mr. Wolfgang Berger as we discuss the matches of the Austrian national team during the 1978 World Cup. Mr. Berger is the administrator of rapidhammer.com, a blog about Rapid Vienna and West Ham United. Hello, Wolfgang. Welcome back.
Hello, Shahan. Nice to meet you again.
Thank you. So let's pick up from our conversation on Austria from 1976 and 77, the qualifiers into this 1978 World Cup. Can you describe the state of Austrian football in the beginning of 1978 with the World Cup on the horizon?
Yes, I'm happy that we can follow up the recording of the qualifiers of Austria, leading to the first qualification of Austria for the World Cup after 20 years, because they had competed in 1954, 1958, and then we had 20 years to pause and never qualified again. Austria had lost out on qualifying for the World Cup in Germany in 1974. They had a decisive playoff game against Sweden at this time, and unfortunately they lost in Germany. And then we got a new national manager in Helmut Senekovic. He managed to get Austria to the World Cup in Argentina by winning a group with the German Democratic Republic, Malta, and Turkey. Austria won the last game against Turkey with 1-0 away in Izmir, and qualified because the German Democratic Republic had drawn twice against Turkey, but Austria had won the last game against Turkey, and therefore Austria went to the World Cup. We were quite optimistic because also the year 1978 was a good year for Austrian club football. Austria Vienna, one of the two large clubs in the capital of Vienna, had for the first time reached a European final against Anderlecht in the European Cup Winners' Cup. This was in the same year, and the state of Austrian football was quite optimistic, and the Austrian clubs and also the national team played quite well, leading to the World Cup. Also, to mention Hans Krankl, we will talk about him a lot later. He scored 41 goals for Rapid Vienna at this time, and he got the Golden Boot in Europe in this season.
So there was a general mood of optimism from the public and the press because of this unexpected qualification and all the excitement that it garnered.
Yes, there was a lot of excitement. We were very optimistic. I was a young man at this time, and it was my first year at university, also some kind of new start. We were all very, very optimistic this year.
We start with World Cup preparations. There's a number of friendlies ahead of this World Cup. The first one is on February 15th, 1978 at Athens against Greece. That ends in a 1-1 tie. Hans Krankl scores Austria's goal. The takeaway is the debut of Hubert Baumgartner, who would act as a backup to Friedrich Concilia. He's the Austria-Vienna goalkeeper. Also, Günther Happich of Vienna Sport Club also earns his first cap. But this is the final cap, the seventh and final cap for Peter Persidis.
Hubert Baumgartner, I think, is not one of the most famous Austrian goalkeepers because he was always in the shadow of Friedel Concilia at this time, who was the regular goalkeeper of Austria. But he was very, very instrumental in Austria-Vienna reaching the European Cup Winners' Final because he had a lot of antics in this campaign. And in the semi-final, he saved penalties in the penalty shootout against the Moscow team, and so they went to the final, which, well, that's unfortunately got lost 0-4 against Anderlecht. But at this time, Anderlecht was one of the best teams in Europe, it was not really dampening the Austrian hopes. It was just a big achievement to get into the Cup Winners' Cup final with Herbert Prohaska. He also was one of the heroes of the Austrian team. And I just wanted to mention Baumgartner because he was really a good keeper, but always in the shadow of Friedel Concilia.
Next, there's a friendly against the improving Belgian team now under manager Gitis. This is on March 22nd, 1978 at Charleroi. This match, Austria loses 1-0. The only new cap for this match is another backup goalkeeper, Erwin Fuchs-Bickler, who would replace Concilia in the second half. Let's discuss Hans Krankel that you mentioned earlier, who's earning a reputation as a player for the future. A lot of teams are eyeing him at this point. He would be very much in demand at the end of this World Cup after he won Europe's Golden Shoe. Ernest Happel, around this time, he said something like, I wouldn't pay much for him, which is somewhat controversial from another Austrian to say that. Nevertheless, Krankel was already linked to the likes of Standard Liège and Italian club Perugia at this point. What can you say about his season and his status at this point, just ahead of the World Cup, where he would flourish?
Yeah, he played for Rapid Vienna. He had not started as a boy at Rapid Vienna. He played for a smaller club, but at a quite young age, he got transferred to Rapid Vienna, one of the two big Austrian clubs and the record champion of Austria. Hans Krankel, in this season, he was really at his best in Austria because he scored as he wanted, more or less. Nevertheless, Rapid Vienna didn't win the championship, the Austrian championship. At this time, either Austria, Vienna, or especially Innsbruck. Wacker Innsbruck was a very good club at this time. But Hans Krankel was the best scorer in Austria, and he could score most of his goals. He scored from inside the penalty area. He was also very good in heading balls, but his best was his left foot. So he was very, very good as forward. All our hopes for the World Cup were with Hans Krankel. The Austrian team had a lot of other prolific players, like Willi Kreuz, for instance. And you will see later Schoko Schachner, what his real first name is, Walter Schachner. He was a lot younger than Hans Krankel, and he also would score one very important goal for Austria. But the most important and most cherished player in Austria was, of course, Hans Krankel. He also recorded a song called With the Ball and With the Net. And he was really a very nice guy. I also met him with the supporters club of Rapid Vienna, and he signed, of course, autographs for me. And I remember him very well. And later he was also manager of Rapid Vienna and later of the Austrian team. And I think he's a very nice man. He got 70 years old now, and he got a new hip last year. And well, we still have him as a pundit in football TV in Austria.
Next, there will be another friendly on April 4th at Basel against Switzerland. This time, Austria won 1-0. However, this was the final cap for Alfred Riedler. His first cap was in 1975. At this point, he was playing for Standard Liège. You mentioned Austria Vienna and their adventure in the Cup Winners' Cup. Now, this highlighted Austria's revival in European football. Like you said, it was no shame to lose against such a team like Anderlecht, who had some of the best Dutch players around, like Rensenbrink, Arihan, and others, not to mention all the Belgian internationals. What more can you say about Austria Vienna's adventure in this Cup Winners' Cup?
The Austria Vienna adventure. Well, I am a Rapid Vienna fan, of course. So I haven't been to the first games of Austria in this European Cup. But when they got to the semi-final, I think it was something like an Austrian matter of honor for Austria to have the chance to reach a first European final, because the Austrian clubs they did very well within the 50s of the 20th century. But towards there was some highlights, like sometimes beating Real Madrid, but only in the first leg and losing out in the second one and things like that. But the Austrian clubs never have got into a final. And therefore, when Austria Vienna played against Moscow in the stadium, in the big stadium, at this time it was called the Prater Stadion in Vienna. Now it is called the Ernst Happel Stadium. We will also hear about Ernst Happel later in this podcast. When they played in the Ernst Happel or Prater Stadion at this time, of course, it was sold out. And even being a Rapid Vienna fan, I went there to this semi-final. And as I said before, Hubert Baumgartner, the Austrian goalkeeper, he saved penalties. And in the end, Austria went through. That was the story of Austria Vienna, as far as I remember, because Rapid Vienna later got into 2 European finals, and this, of course, matched the feat of Austria Vienna.
The last preparation friendly was on May 20th at Vienna at Prater Stadion against the Netherlands, managed by Ernst Happel, who they would meet again during the World Cup as well. This match, the Netherlands won 1-0. Ari Han scored, but Ernst Baumeister earned his first cap in this match of Austria Vienna. After this result against a very good Dutch side, what was the general mood following these preparations that yielded only 1 win and 2 losses?
Well, I think we thought that we would do well in Argentina at this time, even haven't lost against Belgium and the Netherlands. We knew they were very good teams, especially the Netherlands, managed by Ernst Happel. And therefore, I think the mood was still buoyant, the mood was still good, and everybody was happy about going there. But also when we got our group, it was quite a difficult group. The Austrian football fans, they were still in good mood, but I think nobody was very optimistic about getting to the next stage, about surviving the group. But on the other hand, well, going to a World Championship, going to the World Cup for the first time after 20 years, it was very much optimism there. But after this preparation, we were a little damped, of course, and then thinking twice about the teams we had to play against. Well, we were far from sure to get through to the next round.
Helmut Senekovic did not do much experimentation as far as players ahead of the World Cup. Did he have a settled squad at this point, you think?
Yes, he had a settled squad, and you will also see in the World Cup, he used most of his players in all the 6 games. And therefore, I think he had quite a good squad, a settled squad with some players playing not in Austria, but a lot of players still playing in Austria, which would be transferred to abroad after the World Cup, of course, on many of them. And he had quite a good squad. He had also used during the qualifications, during the qualifiers. He had used Herbert Prohaska, Johann Krankel, Willi Kreuz, Kurt Jara, Robert Zara, Friedel Concilia in goal. He had used most of the players in many of the games if they had not been suspended or injured. Most of them were also fit for the World Cup. Only Roland Hattenberger, a very important player in midfield, unfortunately, he was injured and he could not take part in any of the World Cup games. But all the other players, the important players, they were all fit and running when it came to the World Cup in Argentina.
Let's look at the final 22 for this World Cup. At number 1, we have starting goalkeeper Friedrich Concilia of Wacker Innsbruck. At number 2, we have the captain of the team, Robert Sara of Austria Vienna. Number 3, Erich Obermeier of Austria Vienna. Number 4,
Gerhard
Gerhard
Breitenberger.
of Voslins, yeah.
Difficult name. We had a lot of burgers in the team, you will see. Gerhard
yeah.
Breitenberger is the first of the burgers.
Number 5, you have Bruno Petzai of Wacker Innsbruck. Number 6, Roland Hattenberger of Stuttgart in West Germany. Number 7, Josef Hickersberger of Fortuna Düsseldorf in West Germany. Number 8, Herbert Prohaska of Austria Vienna. Number 9, Hansi Krankel of Rapid Vienna. Number 10, Wilhelm Kreuz playing at Feyenoord in Netherlands. Number 11, Kurt Jara playing at Duisburg in West Germany. Number 12, Edward Krieger of Club Brugge in Belgium. Number 13, Günther Happich of Vienna Sport Club. Number 14, Heinrich Strasser of Admira Wacker. Number 15, Heribert Weber of Sturm Graz. Number 16, Peter Persidis of Rapid Vienna. Number 17, Franz Oberracker of Wacker Innsbruck. Number 18, Walter Schachner of Donauwitzer. Number 19, Hans Pirkner of Austria Vienna. Number 20, Ernst Baumeister of Austria Vienna. Number 21, backup goalkeeper Erwin Fuchs-Bickler of West Linz. Number 22, the other goalkeeper, Hubert Baumgartner of Austria Vienna. Some of the players who were on the preliminary final 40 include the likes of Gerhard Fleischmann of Admira Wacker, Herbert Führer of Rapid Vienna, Werner Kries of Wacker Innsbruck, Eric Marco of GAK Graz, Joseph Stering of Wacker Innsbruck, who would be injured, Werner Zanon of Wacker Innsbruck, Felix Gaslich of Austria Vienna, Anton Pickler of Sturm Graz, Josef Sara of Austria Vienna, Peter
He was the
Meister
brother of Robert
of Robert.
Sara.
Yes.
Yeah. But he didn't go to the World Cup. Yeah.
Yes. Peter Meister of First Vienna, Franz Zore of St. Veit, Gerhard Ritter of Dornbirn, Karl Daxbacher of Austria Vienna, Johann Scharmann of LASK Linz, Kurt Welzel of Wacker Innsbruck, Gernot Jurtin of Sturm Graz, Alfred Riddle of Standard Liège in Belgium, and Thomas Paritz of Austria Vienna. While researching from the prestigious World Soccer magazine, I learned a number of things from some of the players. Apparently, Hans Pirkner had a driving school that also taught ski champion Anne-Marie Moser. The business, however, went bust. I also learned that Edward Krieger had bought shares in a South African gold mine that went bust.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I just picked up reading the magazine. I'm not sure if it's accurate. It was also reported that Austria would be taking a chaplain with them to the World Cup, Friedrich
Yes, they did.
Pechtel. According to Robert Sara, he was quoted as saying that when all the pressure starts to get on us, he could just be the man to keep us cool.
Yeah, it was Friedrich Pechtel. Yes, he was a chaplain, and he traveled to Argentina with the Austrian team. Yeah.
We come to the World Cup. Austria are in a group with Brazil, Spain, and Sweden. The first match is at Buenos Aires at the stadium of Vélez Sarsfield against Spain on June 3rd. This Spain team includes the likes of Asensi, Migueli, the Real Madrid veteran Piri, Carlos Rexach, among others, managed by Kubala, the former Barcelona legend. For this match, Austria starts with the following lineup. Concilia, Robert Sarat, captain of the team, Obermeier, Breitenberger, Petzai, Hickersberger. He replaced by Heribert Weber in the 67th minute. Prohaska, Krankel, Kreuz, Yara, Schachner, and he'd replaced by Pirkner in the 80th minute. Austria takes the lead in the 9th minute. Walter Schachner received a long cross from just inside the Austrian half from Petzai on the left side near the touchline. And he advanced on a solo run and shot from a narrow angle to give Austria the lead. Spain would tie the match in the 21st minute when Marcelino crossed from the right side and Danny volleyed in the equalizer.
It was a deflected shot.
Yes.
It was a deflected shot. It was a Whittle Concilia stood no chance to get near the ball. It was deflected, but the first goal, it was really a wonderful goal. We can talk about Schoko Schachner a little later, about Walter Schachner, because he's quite an interesting player.
Austria would score the winner in the 76th minute. There was a shot from outside of the box. It was blocked by a Spanish defender, and Krankel shot in the rebound for his first goal in this World Cup and Austria's winner. In this match, in general, Austria were in more control. They were better balanced, despite Spain having most of a possession, it seems like.
Well, I remember very well that it was great that in the 9th minute, Austria scored the first goal. It was a counter-attack. As you said, Austria sat back quite a lot and they were very disciplined in defense. And we had a very good defense, especially Bruno Petzai. He also was very good in opening up the play from the defense. Schoko Schachner, Schoko was his nickname. He was called, first name was Walter. At this time, he didn't play for a first division club in Austria. He played for second division club, Donawitz. They are now called Leoben. Donawitz is a steel town, steel manufacturing town in Styria. And they had a football team which was some kind of an elevator team going up, going down. Schoko Schachner, he was their forward. And of course, he had got so many skillful players in his team. And therefore, he was very used to doing things alone, just to take things in his own hand. And this was a typical goal for him because, as you already mentioned, he got the ball from Bruno Petzai at the halfway line. And then he started one of his runs just around on the right wing. And he got in a good but already difficult position after having taken on two Spanish players. He had from a tight angle. He was eye to eye with the goalkeeper and his shot and the ball went more or less under the crossbar, and it was 1-0 for Austria. And of course, Spain responded and had a lot of attacks, but Friedel Concilia was very good in the goal of Austria. But in the 22nd minute, it was Dani scoring. It was then a game in which we, of course, feared that Spain would get the win against Austria. Austria was playing in quite an unfamiliar kit because at this time, Austria always had white shirts, black shorts, and most of the time, black socks. But as Spain played in red and dark blue and black socks, Austria had to change and they played in white shirts and white shorts and red socks. I've never seen that before. Of course, it might have been happened, but I didn't remember. It was quite an unfamiliar kit. And it was also quite unfamiliar that they had a lot of chances from counterattacks against Spain. It was, I think, Helmut Zenekovic had very good tactics for this game. They weathered the storm of Spain. And in the second half, in the 76th minute, it was Hans Krankel reacting very quickly after a rebound, after a shot from Willi Kreuz. And he got the ball from a very close to the goal into the back of the net. And well, it was the 76th minute, just the beginning of the so-called Rapid Viertelstunde, which is not for the Austrian team, but for Rapid Vienna, which was Hans Krankel's club at this time. They have always clap when they are always clapping, all the supporters, when the last 15 minutes begin. And this is called Rapid Viertelstunde, because Rapid is very well known for, or has been very well known for scoring in this last 50 minutes of a game. And it was really the 76th minute when Hans Krankl got to the ball and scored. And they weathered the storm from Spain and really won the first game, which was, I think, a very, very sensational that they won this first game after 20 years of not competing in a World Cup.
The next match was on June 7th at the same venue at Buenos Aires at the Vélez Sarsfield Stadium against Sweden. So for this match, we have Concilia, Sara, Obermeier, Breitenberger, Petzai, Hickersberger, Prohaska, Krankel, Kreuz, Yara, Krieger, and he'd be replaced by Heribert Weber in the 71st minute. And this was Krieger's first match back from suspension.
We should mention, because you mentioned that Krieger was suspended for the first game of the World Cup. As far as I remember, Schachner only started this game because Krieger was suspended. Usually they would maybe have only Willi Kreuz and Hans Krankl in the attack of Austria for the first game. But as Krieger was suspended, Kreuz went a little more deep and Schachner got a nod and he scored the first goal. That's how it often happens in football. The substitute comes in and he scores.
Austria would win this match 1-0. In the 42nd minute, Hans Krankl was fouled by Bjorn Nordqvist in a box, and Krankl himself scored from a penalty kick. This was 2 wins for Austria, and they were already in the second round. So already a successful World Cup.
Yeah, that was really great. We would not have thought that it would be that outcome after 2 games, that it was sure that Austria was in the second round and that Brazil, the record world champions and world champions of 1970, only 8 years back, that they would have to win against Austria to reach the second round. So we had thought maybe before the championship that Brazil would have already have won their first 2 games against Spain and Sweden, and they would be sure to have gone through, and that it would be maybe an easier game for Austria, the third and last game of the group stage. But it was the other way around. It was Brazil having to hope that Austria would be happy being through and will let Brazil off the hook and get through. Yes, and this was very interesting. After these first 2 games, we were very happy. I was also looking much forward to the Brazil game.
Yes, like you said, Brazil, their backs were against the wall and they had to win to get to the next round, while Austria were in a comfortable position of having already gone through. This match against Brazil was on June 11th at Mar del Plata. And this is a Brazil team that has the likes of Emerson Leão in goal, Oscar, Toninho Cerezo, Zico, Roberto Dinamite, and Dirceu, among others. Now, for this match, Austria started with Concilia, Sara, Obermeier, Breitenberger, Petzai, Hickersberger. He'd be replaced by Heribert Weber in the 61st minute. Prohaska, Krankel, Kreuz, Yara, Krieger, and he'd be replaced by Günther Hapic in the 84th minute. This was Günther Hapic's 5th and final cap, all of them in 1978. So the match itself, Brazil would win 1-0. Roberto Dinamite scored the winner for Brazil. This way, both teams were through to the second round. At this point, I imagine just the mere fact that Austria had qualified to the second round made the World Cup a success in itself.
Yes, of course. As far as I remember, this game was not a very good game. Brazil was not at its height at this time, and Austria had already been through. Austria played quite defensive against Brazil, as far as I remember. And also in the second half, when Austria was 1 goal back from the goal by Roberto in the 40th minute, most of the time it seemed Austria sat back and also tried to hit Brazil just on the counter attack. And Helmut Zenekovic, he didn't bring strikers in. He just more or less played with the same team at the same time. And as you mentioned, he had Hickersberger replaced by Weber and Krieger replaced by Happich, but he didn't bring any striker into the game. So it seemed that Austria was more or less content with losing just narrowly against Brazil. And afterwards, of course, everybody was very happy, but for a short time, it was not sure in which of the second stage of the World Cup groups Austria would be playing, because at this time there were two groups. After the first stage, there were two groups, and only the first and the second from these groups would go then to the finals and of the World Cup. And they were not a knockout phase after the group phase immediately, like it is now. So it was a question to which group would Austria be going to play? In which group would they play? Would it be a more or less difficult group? There was some discussion afterwards if Austria or Brazil topped their group 3 in which they had played, because Austria had scored 3 goals and conceded 2 goals. And Brazil had scored 2 goals and conceded 1 goal. So the goal difference was +1. It was the same goal difference. And I read that there was a change of rules very shortly before the World Cup, that if two teams were on the same goal difference, it would be decided which team won by the number of goals scored. But they had got mixed up something in the rules, and another rule which said there would have to be just a throwing of a dice, just not had been suspended or taken out clearly of the rules. So then Brazil for some time said, no, we want to rely on the older rules and it is unclear, the new rules. We want to play in the other group. So then we would avoid Argentina, which was in the other group and was, of course, the home nation and was favorite of maybe winning the World Cup. And therefore, Brazil argued that Austria should be placed second and not placed first. But in the end, the FIFA ruled that the new rules would apply and were clear enough. And Austria won the group 3, topping it. And Brazil was only runner-up, and Spain had to fly home to Europe.
In this second round, Austria is in a group with the Netherlands, Italy, and West Germany.
Of the European Championship starting this year in June, because we also have the Netherlands in this group. Then we have France, and now we have Poland. It will also be a very difficult group. And again, the Netherlands.
This match against the Dutch is on June 14th at Cordoba. For this match, we have the following lineup: Concilia, Sara, Obermeier, Breitenberger, Petzai, Hickersberger, Prohaska, Krankel, Kroes, Yara, and Krieger. For Breitenberger, this will be his 15th and final cap. His first cap was in 1976. Given what would unfold, I'm surprised that Senekovic did not make a single substitution in this match. This match would be a disaster for Austria, as they would lose 5-1. Ernie Brands opened the scoring in the 6th minute. Rabbi Rensenbrink scored a penalty kick in the 35th minute. Immediately, a minute later, Johnny Rep lobbed over Concilia for the 3rd goal. So the first half, the Dutch already have a 3-0 lead. Early in the second half, in the 53rd minute, Johnny Rep scores again to give the Dutch a 4-0 lead. Austria pull a goal back through Eric Obermeier, who lobs over Schrijvers. But in the 82nd minute, Willy van der Kerkhoff scores the 5th Dutch goal. The Dutch win 5-1. We have to mention again, managed by the Austrian Ernst Happel.
You like to torture me, Shahan. You like to torture me by telling me that also. So exactly.
Has there ever been an explanation why the side imploded to such an extent against the Dutch?
Well, I think it's in Austrian football, we always remember that some decades back, or maybe almost a century back, Austria had a wonder team. They had a wonder team in the time between the First and the Second World War. Austria was the best, or more or less one of the best teams on the continent. So we still have something of that in us, and we think when we play well, then we could go on and become the wonder team again. We also have a saying in Austrian language, it's called Himmelhoch jauchzend, zu Tode betrübt. This means if you are happy, you are flying very, very high. But then if things get worse, they get very, very low. So this is something how the Austrian supporters, how the Austrian football fans reacting, and also the players somehow. I think after having topped the group, having been better than Brazil in the end, we thought, what can happen? Nothing. We are one of the best teams in the world. We are very, very optimistic. We have gone through to the second round, and now Holland is coming. We have only lost 1-0, 1-0 to them in the last game, preparation game before, and we will take revenge. We are very good. Well, I think that Austria somehow forgot one of their achievements, which they had in the first stage of the World Cup. They had played out of a very solid defense. And when you look back at this game against the Netherlands, you will realize that Netherlands scored some counter goals against Austria because Austria was playing somehow too offensive and not taking care of the defense. Their minds were somewhere in the future and not grinding in this game. Of course, it happened very quickly that in the 6 minutes it was 1-0 to the Netherlands. And there were also some mistakes in defense, which led to 3-0 at the break. And also Austria tried, but they were not lucky. They didn't get any clear-cut chances. And while in the end, when it was 2-0 and 3-0, Austria still tried, but in the second half, there were very little forward attacks by Austria. Pulling one goal back is just a consolation. And of course, everybody went out with their heads down. But then there was a very interesting encounter because before the World Cup, an Austrian bank institute had promised if Austria would manage to get to the second round of the World Cup, they would pay for the Austrian wives and girlfriends to fly to Argentina and meet their husbands there. This was managed, and Senekovic agreed to the wives and girlfriends coming to Argentina, but it wasn't possible that they met before the Holland game. They met afterwards for the first time. So maybe, I don't know, but the players, they didn't only have a chaplain with them, but they also had their wives in mind, maybe. And all these things together led to a losing 1-5 to the Netherlands. And of course, it was some masterstroke of Ernst Happel. He's an Austrian manager, and he was also a very good Austrian player for Rapid Vienna and for the Austrian national team. He was third. He was one of the players who were third in the World Championship of 1954 when Germany won the World Cup in 1954. And Ernst Happel was one of the greatest players of the Austrian team. And he went on to become one of the greatest managers in European football. He also won European Cups, and he was a manager of Netherlands. And of course, he knew the weaknesses of the Austrian players, and he very, very well managed the Netherlands. And they knew exactly how to beat Austria. And that's what happened. So the wives and girlfriends were there, but not to celebrate, but to consolate the players coming back with their heads down from a 1-5 drubbing against the Netherlands.
The next match was against Italy on June 18th. at Buenos Aires at the El Monumental. Now, this is an Italian side that has the backbone of the players who would win the 1982 World Cup. The likes of Dino Zoff in goal, Cabrini, Gentile, Scirea, Tardelli, Graziani, and Paolo Rossi, managed by Enzo Bearzot. For this match, we have the following lineup: Consiglia, Sara, Obermeier, Petzai, Hickersberger, Prohaska, Krankel, Kreuz, Krieger, Strasser, Schachner, and he'd replaced by Pirkner in the 63rd minute. For this match, Italy wins 1-0. In the 14th minute, Paolo Rossi does a combination play with Franco Causio on the right side and advances to shoot past Consiglia. And Italy wins 1-0. Austria's eliminated, but defensively, much better performance than the last match.
Yes, they were performing much better. And of course, they knew that all would have been forgotten if they would get another drubbing against Italy. All of the achievements from the first stage would be forgotten, and it would be zu Tode betrübt, as I said before. Everybody would laugh at them again and say, what have you thought? You will be champions after winning against Spain and Sweden, and then you lose one game after the other. Everything would be very bad in the opinion of the Austrian fans, who, as I said, are quite fast in being optimistic, but quite fast also in not swearing at the team, but getting very desperate and very sad. So everybody knew that, and therefore Helmut Zenekovic, he changed the team. Kurt Jara didn't play again, and also, as you mentioned, another regular was not in this team because it was Breitenberger. Breitenberger was on the left of the defense, and he was one of the weaknesses against the Netherlands. And therefore, Ernst Strasser came in on the left of the defense. Unfortunately, it was Ernst Strasser who was to blame for the quick first goal of Italy scored by the young star Paolo Rossi, because, as you said, it was a 1-2 by Rossi and Causio, and Rossi played the ball to Causio, and Causio played the ball back to Rossi into the penalty area. And I remember very well, I thought, no danger, because Ernst Strasser is in between Causio and Rossi. He will get the ball, and it looked as if he had got the ball, and he just would have to shoot the ball out behind the goalpost, not into the goalpost, but just behind to the right of the goalpost. It would have been quite easy. But he didn't hit the ball well, and it was Rossi who stole the ball from him, and he was into the box, and it was easy to beat Friedel Consiglia afterwards. But I very well remember that it was Ernst Strasser, and everybody was swearing at him, and everybody was very, very angry that Helmut Zenekovic had brought Ernst Strasser in for the first game of the World Cup. But afterwards, Austria got back to a very good defensive unit, and also Ernst Strasser played well. And it was a strong defensive unit, and we didn't allow any other goal for Italy. In the end, we could say we have lost with our heads high, because it would have been possible maybe to get a draw. But of course, only losing 1-0 to Italy, which was at this time one of the best teams in this World Cup. They were also one of the favorites of maybe going into the finals. It was quite an achievement compared to the drubbing against the Netherlands. So mood had gone higher again after this game.
So how was this mood ahead of the match against West Germany, having already been eliminated?
Yeah, Austria had been eliminated, but Germany had also been one of the, let's say, arch foes of Austria, because we are the smaller brothers of Germany. We are talking the same language. Many of the Austrian players get transferred to Germany at this time, and also the same now. So playing against Germany is always something of David and Goliath somehow. And especially at this time, I remember when I traveled with Interrail through Europe just 1 year before in 1977, after having finished from high school. As we talk the same language, many people which I met on the train, they said, "Are you from Germany?" And I always was very eager to say, "No, no, I am from Austria. I am from Austria, and Austria is much better than Germany. We even have the UN General Secretary at this time, and we have the better football players in Hans Krankel, which is very much better than the Germans," which of course was not true, and we didn't really believe in that. But because Germany was the winner of the World Cup 1974, and they were the reigning champions at this time. And Austria had not won against Germany since 1931. From
Yes.
1931 to 1978, 47 years, no win against Germany. The last win in 1931, I have looked it up, it was a 5-0 against Germany. This was the last one, and at this time, Austria was really better than the German football team. But afterwards, all the important games were lost in qualifications, and even in the semi-final of the World Cup in Switzerland, Austria had a really very good team, and they thought that they would get into the final, and they lost the semi-final against Germany at this time. And yes, they have always lost when it counted. They have lost against Germany, and at this time, Austria thought, well, we have got our moral back. We have shown against Italy that we are a good team. It has not been luck or something like that in the first stage. Now we have got our moral back. We have shown against Italy, and we will even show better than that we can play better football against Germany, and maybe we can eliminate them, because Germany still had a chance to get through to the finals if all the results would go their way and if they would win against Austria. So it was a game which we looked very much forward. Everybody was very excited about that game.
So for this match on June 21st at Cordoba, Austria would be wearing red for this match.
For the first time, I think, in the World Cup.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. It was the second kit at this time. As I said earlier, usually they were playing in black and white, and the second kit was red.
For this match, we had the following lineup: Concilia, Sara, Obermeier, Petzai, Hickersberger, Prohaska, Krankel, Kreuz, Krieger, Strasser, Schachner, and he'd be replaced by Franz Oberacker in the 71st minute. For Hickersberger, this would be his 39th and final cap. His first cap had been in 1968. It was also the final cap for Eduard Krieger. This was his 25th and final cap. His first cap had been in 1970. Now let's take a look at the West Germany side, managed by Helmut Schoen. You have Sepp Maier in goal from Bayern Munich, captain of the team Berti Vogts, playing his final match for West Germany, captain of Mönchengladbach, Bernd Dietz of Duisburg, Rolf Russmann of Schalke, Manfred Kaltz of Hamburg, Rainer Bonhoff of Borussia Mönchengladbach, Rüdiger Abramczyk of Schalke, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge of Bayern Munich, Dieter Müller of Köln, he'd replaced by Klaus Fischer of Schalke in the 60th minute, Erich Bier of Hertha Berlin, he'd be replaced by Hansi Müller of Stuttgart in the 46th minute, and Bernd Holzenbein of Eintracht Frankfurt. So West Germany would take the lead in the 19th minute. On the right side, Rummenigge does a combination play with Dieter Müller, and he advances and shoots past Concilia. In the second half, in the 59th minute, Austria tied the match. A cross from the right side was deflected off of Berti Vogts into his own net. Austria would take the lead in the 66th minute. Krieger's cross from the left side was controlled by Krankel and Validin. Beautiful goal. However, Germany would tie the match in the 72nd minute. Bonhoeff's free kick from the right side was headed in by Holzenbein. It would be near the end in the 87th minute when Austria would score the winner. Sarah's long cross from the right side reached Krankel, and he advanced and shot past Meyer. So Austria had won 3-2, and like you said, the first win in 47 years. This win is considered one of the greatest moments of Austrian football. Can you discuss it from a historical perspective?
Yes, you really brought the smile back on my face now with with all you told us about this game, and I had to hold back, of course, and didn't want to interrupt you because this was very good to hear all that again. Of course, these goals by Hans Krankl are still in my mind, and I still can reproduce them. When you wake me up in the middle of the night, I will always say Hans Krankl scored 2 goals and how he scored these goals, as you beautifully told us. The first one, it was the 2-1, the first goal, which led to the lead of Austria. It was really a goal to watch again and again because it was a cross from Krieger, from the goalkeeper to the left of the penalty area. And as we said, Krankl was, therefore, he usually would have shot with his right foot because he was standing with his on the right side of the penalty area from his angle, and from the goalkeeper, he was to the left. But he controlled the ball with his left foot, and the ball was still in the air, and then he volleyed it into the back of the net, just under the crossbar. No chance for Sepp Maier in German goal. This is really a beauty of a goal. And well, the Germans, of course, they hit back quite quickly, just 2 minutes after the goal. Austria had maybe celebrated too much, like it happens, and Austria got a goal. Germany got the goal back, and it was 2-2. And then it went hither and forth, and it was a game which, even if Germany, I think if they would have drawn, they would play it for the third place, I think. But Austria also wanted to win. The third goal, the 3-2, also scored by Krankl, his second goal in this match. It was also somehow it was similar to the first goal which Austria had scored in the World Cup. You remember the goal by Schoko Schachner? He had got the ball even deeper in the Austrian half than Krankl did, but also it was a solo run on the left wing. And it was the same with the last goal of this game and the last goal for Austria in this World Cup. It was a beautiful cross from Sarah across the pitch to the left side, and Hans Krankl got the ball and he took on at least 2 or 3 defenders of Germany, especially Mr. Rüssmann, who was incapable of stopping Krankl throughout this game. He was just not good enough for Hans Krankl at this time. And Krankl then was alone before Sepp Maier, and he made the goal. And at this time, I think all of Austria erupted. And of course, I watched the game in TV and not on the radio, but the radio commentary has got so famous that afterwards, always when we rewatch the game, you get the radio commentary together with the pictures from the TV. So the radio commentary, he was really so excited at this 3-2. He said, now we are kissing one another here in the studio, and just wait for 1 or 2 more minutes, and then you can have all in Austria, you can have a glass of wine, a Viertel, as we call it, a quarter of a liter. His name is Engineer Eddie Finger. As in Austria, you always use the title somehow. He's got an engineering title, Engineer Eddie Finger. He got so famous after this commentary. We have heard it ever again. And he said, "Ich werde narrisch, ich werde narrisch." This means I'm getting crazy, I'm getting crazy. It's our Hans Krankel, he has scored, our Hansi Bulli, he has scored the goal. Unser Hans Krankel. And now, jetzt haben wir es geschlagen, die Deutschen. Now we have beaten the Germans, and we are getting kisses all over us now into here with the assistant and so on. Well, it was really, everybody was getting crazy. Somehow, of course, for Austrian football, it was quite a feat to beat Germany after 47 years, of course. But of course, it was also from a historical perspective, as you said, it was also something which is a little difficult because it took a lot of years until the next possibility to win against Germany. And then it was in 1986 in a friendly.
Oh yeah,
So it
the
was
one,
only
the Lothar Matthäus match where he gets sent off.
Yes, it
Yeah.
was a test match.
Yeah.
It was a friendly 8 years later. Austria even won 4-1.
Yeah.
But in all the games where winning counts, we had qualifiers against Germany for European Championships or World Cups. Austria again didn't win. They drew at the best or lost against Germany. We always talked about Cordoba all the years, all the many, many years afterwards. And some of the Austrian footballers of later years, they said we cannot hear the name of the city of Cordoba anymore because still everybody was somehow reveling in Cordoba. But now, from a historical perspective, Austria now has a German manager in Ralf Rangnick, which is a very, very famous, a very good manager. And he has really made it possible that Austria have bet Germany last autumn 2-0. And what is very interesting, of course, it was only a friendly, but what was also very interesting that now Austria have gone unbeaten against Germany for 2 games because they have beaten them in 2018 in Klagenfurt 2-1, and now they've beat them 2-0 in Vienna after 5 years. And now we have 2 games, one against Germany, the one after the other. And I'm very much looking forward when we will meet with Germany, maybe in the European Championships. We will see. It's not sure, of course. We have to proceed from a very, very difficult group again with the Netherlands, with France, and with Poland. But Austria have a very good team now with a very good manager, and we are looking very much forward. And I think maybe now we will forget Cordoba, and we are looking forward to something maybe much better in the Euros in Germany.
Now, overall, can you discuss your own experiences during this World Cup, how you lived it?
Yeah, for me, as I said at the beginning, it was for me a very happy time. I had already finished the first year of my studies at Vienna University. I had passed the first and most difficult exam at the end of this first year of studies. And then the World Cup came. Rapid Vienna had played quite well before, and Austria Vienna had reached the World Cup. Hans Krankel had won the Golden Boot in Europe, and now we have started into this World Cup so well with wins against Spain and Sweden, of course. And it was also against Sweden that this was some kind of revenge, because for the World Cup of 1974, Austria had to play a playoff game, a decisive game, which team would be able to qualify for the World Cup in 1970 in Germany, and Austria lost against Sweden in Gelsenkirchen on a snow surface. They lost against them. Now it was some kind of revenge to beat them. And at this time, 1969 or 1970, also Hans Krankel had played already as a quite young player. And now in 1978, of course, it was 1974. Yes, he played as a young player. And now in 1978, he was able to defeat Spain. He was able to defeat Sweden. And then, best of all, Germany. So he was my footballing hero at this time. And he was the best player of Austria, and he has scored most of the Austrian goals. He has scored 4 goals in the World Cup in 6 games. That's quite a feat, isn't it? Therefore, it was a very happy time with a grande finale against Germany and eliminating them and making it possible that Poland competed in the final with the Austrian manager of Ernst Happel. This is also quite a good thing. Well, it was a happy time back then, 1978, and the best of World Cups which Austria have played in the last centuries. I'm sorry to say that for me at this time, to wait 20 years for the next World Cup after I haven't been born in 1958 when Austria played the last time in the World Cup. And then it took 20 years until 1978. So it was the first World Cup of my life, of course. And at this time, we said it was a very long time waiting 20 years to get a World Cup again. But now, unfortunately, I have to tell you that the last World Cup, of course, you will know as a football historian, but I have to tell our spectators and the people who are listening that the last World Cup in which Austria was playing is in 1998. I had to look it up somehow because it is so much back that I didn't remember even. Of course, I remember it was in France. It was in 1998. And so this is more than 20 years, I think, that we have not been at the World Cup again. And we haven't qualified last time. And now we have qualified very comfortably for the European Championships. And I hope that Ralf Rangnick will stay as a manager, as a national manager, and will lead us to the next World Cup again.
This World Cup would have a profound effect on this Austrian generation. Krankel immediately joined Barcelona after the finals. Others like Prohaska, Schachner, Petsai would join the Italian and West German leagues in the following years. Can you discuss this bounce on Austrian football?
Yeah, I think this World Cup was very, very important for the Austrian players because it opened the way to European nations to play there, which would not have been possible without this World Cup. Of course, Hans Kangl was already discussing with foreign clubs, but as you mentioned at the beginning, these weren't clubs like Barcelona or other Spanish clubs, but now he has really got into the frame of Spanish clubs, and in the end, Barcelona made it. He signed for Barcelona, and he was one of the players winning the first European Cup for Barcelona against Fortuna Düsseldorf 1 year later. And he is still a hero in Barcelona. I have never been to this ground, but I hear that there's a big picture of Hans Krankel. He was called the goleador afterwards when he played in Spain because he scored so many goals. This was really very important for him. He got one of the greats of Barcelona and will never be forgotten there. But also Herbert Prohaska, he played in Italy for Inter Mailand and for AS Roma. And many of the other players went to play at European big clubs. And I think without the World Cup, this wouldn't have been possible. It was some kind of a golden generation of Austria, of Austrian football.
In closing, what is the legacy of this World Cup historically for the Austrian nation?
Well, I think we will always remember Cordoba, of course. We will always remember that Austria got back into the footballing world with very good games in this 1978 World Cup. And of course, for me, it was the first World Cup which I was present at TV at this time. And I think many of the players of this time became quite good managers. For instance, Josef Hickersberger, he managed Rapid Vienna and he also managed the Austrian football team. Herbert Prohaska, he also managed the Austrian football team and was also manager for clubs, was quite an important manager. Though Hans Krankel was not as good as a manager as he was as a striker, he also was a manager of the Austrian team and of Rapid Vienna, but he never got that good as a manager as he was as a striker. And also afterwards, Rapid Vienna also got to a European Cup winners final with Hans Krankel in the team. I think it was a very good time for Austria, and it brought us a lot of proud. We were very proud, and even beating Germany made us very proud. And of course, as I mentioned before, sometimes we just talked about Cordoba. So we are happy that now we have a team which is capable to beat Germany in this time, and therefore maybe we can put Cordoba to the records now and go on to even better things.
With that, I would like to thank you for your participation in this interview. As always, feel free to leave questions and comments. All our respective contact information is listed on the blog and podcast listings. So, Wolfgang, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sean. It really was great fun to discuss with you and to remember this really very good time for Austrian football. And as I said, we are looking forward to another good time in Germany at the Euros. So I hope to be able to discuss maybe the Euros in years to come with you, Sean.
Yeah, in 20 years. Yeah, we'll discuss.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So thank you very much again
thank
for
you.
having
Thank
me.
you.